The grand chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 kilometers of polished obsidian flooring, its ceiling lost somewhere in the artificial clouds that drifted lazily overhead. Representatives from 417 species sat in their designated zones, each area carefully calibrated to match their homeworld's atmospheric requirements. The Velcrin delegation occupied the methane-rich section on the eastern side, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Crothian hive mind manifested as a shimmering cloud of microscopic entities in a containment field near the center. The Estreme, ancient and mechanical, stood motionless in their vacuum chamber, their optical sensors fixed on the proceedings. Ambassador Chun Wei stood alone in the defendant's circle, a simple platform of human design that looked almost primitive compared to the exotic furnishings around her. She wore a standard diplomatic uniform, dark blue with silver trim, her hands clasped loosely behind her back. Her expression remained neutral as Chancellor Vorum, a towering being composed of crystalline structures that refracted light into cascading rainbows, began reading the charges. The translation devices embedded in the chamber's architecture carried Verum's words in 416 different languages simultaneously. The species known as humanity, originating from the planet designated as Earth in the Sol system, stands accused of 17,412 violations of galactic harmony protocols. These violations span a period of merely 83 standard galactic years since their introduction to the greater cosmic community. Ambassador Chun listened without reaction. She had expected this moment for months now, ever since the incident at the Trell mining colonies. Humans had been hired as security consultants, and they had performed their duties with characteristic efficiency. Perhaps too much efficiency. The Trell pirates who had plagued the colonies for decades were eliminated in 6 weeks. The problem was that humans had used tactics considered aggressive by galactic standards, improvising weapons from mining equipment and setting traps that the Council deemed excessively violent. Furthermore, Chancellor Vorum continued, his crystalline body shifting through shades of disapproving crimson. Humanity has demonstrated a persistent inability to conform to established protocols of conflict resolution. In the Andrus trade dispute, human mediators introduced a concept they called negotiation through strength, which resulted in both parties feeling threatened rather than harmonized. In the Pelax cultural exchange, humans performed what they termed action entertainment that traumatized 3 entire delegations with its depictions of violence and individualistic behavior. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement from various species. The Pelax representative, a being resembling a cluster of floating flowers, visibly wilted at the memory. The Andrusians clicked their mandibles in distress. Ambassador Chun finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. Chancellor, if I may address the Council, these violations, as you call them, stem from fundamental misunderstandings of human nature. We are a young species still learning the ways of galactic civilization. Given time and proper guidance, we can adapt. A Velcrin Council member's translation came through, its voice like wind chimes in a storm. You have had 83 years. Most species achieve basic compliance within 20. Your kind seems pathologically incapable of following established norms. You question everything, challenge authority reflexively, and worst of all, you seem to thrive in chaos that would break lesser species. Another voice joined in, this one from the Crothian hive mind, speaking in perfect unison from 1,000 microscopic speakers. In the incident at Research Station Omega-7, humans jury-rigged a failing containment system using what they called duct tape and creative thinking. While they saved the station, they violated 42 separate safety protocols in the process. When questioned, the human engineer stated, and I quote, "Rules are more like guidelines when everyone's about to die. This attitude is precisely the problem." Ambassador Chun felt a slight smile tug at her lips, but suppressed it. That engineer had been her cousin, actually. She remembered his message after the incident. They're mad because we didn't fill out the proper forms before stopping the reactor meltdown. Can you believe these people? Chancellor Vorum raised one of his crystalline appendages, calling for silence. The Council has deliberated extensively on this matter. We have consulted the ancient texts, the Harmony Accords established 10,000 years ago by the founding species. We have examined precedents from 400 other first contact situations. The conclusion is unanimous and irrevocable. The chamber's lighting shifted, casting long shadows across the obsidian floor. Every representative turned their attention to the human standing in the center circle. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council and all associated organizations. Effective immediately, the Sol system will be quarantined. No species shall enter human space, and no human vessel shall be permitted to leave. Trade agreements are dissolved. Diplomatic channels are closed. Research partnerships are terminated. The quarantine shall remain in effect for a minimum of 1,000 standard years, at which point humanity may petition for re-evaluation, provided they have demonstrated fundamental changes to their chaotic and disruptive nature. The pronouncement echoed through the chamber with the weight of finality. Several species registered what their cultures considered expressions of sympathy. The Estrian's optical sensors dimmed briefly in what passed for their version of sadness. Even some of the more hostile delegations seemed to take no joy in the sentence, recognizing it as a tragedy rather than a victory. Ambassador Chun stood perfectly still for a long moment. Then, to the absolute shock of everyone present, she smiled. Not a small, polite diplomatic smile, but a genuine, wide smile that reached her eyes. "Perfect," she said softly, her voice carrying clearly in the stunned silence. "Thank you, Chancellor. On behalf of humanity, I accept your judgment." Chancellor Vorum's crystalline structure flickered with confusion. "You accept? You do not protest? Do not beg for reconsideration? Your species faces isolation from all galactic civilization. You will be alone in the cosmos, cut off from the greatest assembly of intelligence and culture the universe has ever known." Ambassador Chun's smile didn't fade. Instead, it somehow grew more enigmatic. "Oh, I understand perfectly, Chancellor. 1,000 years of isolation in our own system. No interference from the Galactic Council. No regulations to follow except our own. No protocols to obey. No bureaucracy to navigate. No committees to convince before we try something new." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You've essentially given us exactly what a small but vocal portion of our population has been demanding since first contact. Complete freedom to develop as we choose." The Velcrin representative's patterns flickered with alarm. "But you will stagnate. Without access to our technology, our knowledge, our guidance." "We managed fine before we met you," Ambassador Chun interrupted politely. "In fact, in just the 3,000 years before first contact, we went from discovering agriculture to splitting the atom. From wooden sailing ships to landing on our moon. We're problem solvers, Chancellor. It's what we do best. And you've just given us 1,000 years to solve problems without anyone telling us we're doing it wrong." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of concerned noises from various species. The Crothian hive mind buzzed with agitation. The Androsians clicked frantically. Even the usually stoic Istream shifted in their vacuum chamber. Chancellor Voron struggled to regain control. "Silence. Ambassador Chun, you cannot possibly be suggesting that isolation is preferable to membership in galactic society. We offer you protection, trade, knowledge accumulated over millennia. And in exchange, you wanted us to stop being human," Chun replied, her tone still pleasant, but carrying an edge now. "You wanted us to fit into boxes we were never designed for. Well, now you won't have to deal with us anymore, and we won't have to pretend to be something we're not." It's a win-win situation, wouldn't you say? She executed a small, formal bow. If there's nothing else, Chancellor, I should return to Earth and inform our government of your decision. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear about our new status. 1,000 years is a long time. I wonder what humanity might accomplish when we're free to be ourselves without worrying about violating harmony protocols. As she turned to leave, her final words drifted back across the chamber. Casual and almost cheerful. Watch this. The phrase hung in the air like a promise, and a threat rolled into one. Ambassador Chun walked out of the Galactic Council chamber with the same confident stride she had entered with, leaving behind 417 species, suddenly questioning whether they had just made the wisest decision in galactic history, or the most catastrophic mistake imaginable. 372 galactic standard years had passed since the quarantine began. In the Galactic Council chambers, now relocated to the Velcrin homeworld of Shimmer 7, Chancellor Vorim's successor, Chancellor Krell, presided over a very different assembly. Membership had grown to 543 species, incorporating discoveries from the outer spiral arms and several minor dimensional pockets. Technology had advanced, as it always did when civilizations shared knowledge according to proper protocols. The Council had overseen the peaceful resolution of 83 conflicts, established 14 new trade routes, and successfully integrated 37 newly contacted species into the galactic fold. Yet something troubled the Council, had troubled them for the past century. The Sol System's quarantine field, a sophisticated network of monitoring stations and interdiction satellites that surrounded the entire star system, had been showing unusual readings. Researcher Trilix, a Pelax scientist specializing in long-range observations, floated nervously in the briefing chamber. Her petals had lost their usual vibrant colors, faded to worried grays and browns. Before her hovered a three-dimensional display showing the Sol System surrounded by a glowing boundary representing the quarantine perimeter. The readings began approximately 90 years ago, Trilix explained to the gathered subcommittee. At first, we dismissed them as sensor malfunctions. Quarantine stations reported detecting objects moving within the Sol System at velocities that exceeded our theoretical models. We assumed calibration errors. A Estreme representative's mechanical voice interrupted. Assumed? You are telling us that for 90 years, no one verified these readings? Trilix's petals drooped further. The quarantine was functioning perfectly. No human vessel had attempted to breach it. According to our long-range scans, Earth's electromagnetic emissions remained consistent with a developing industrial civilization, exactly as predicted. There was no reason to suspect anything unusual was occurring. The velocity readings seemed impossible, so we ignored them. She manipulated the display, zooming in on the outer edges of the Sol System. However, 20 years ago, the anomalies became impossible to ignore. Quarantine Station 7 detected what appeared to be a human vessel moving at 0.7 light speed. That station's sensors were immediately replaced, as regulations required. The replacement sensors confirmed the reading. Then Station 12 detected a vessel at 0.8 light speed. Then Station 3 at 0.9. The chamber filled with the multilingual murmur of disbelief. Light speed travel, or anything approaching it, required technology that took most species thousands of years to develop. The Council's own fastest vessels operated at 0.4 light speed, and that was considered cutting edge. Chancellor Krell, a being composed of flowing liquid metal, rippled with concern. Are you suggesting that humans have developed faster-than-light capability? In less than 4 centuries? Without access to Council knowledge or guidance? Not suggesting, Chancellor, Trilix said quietly. Confirming. 6 months ago, Quarantine Station 1 went offline. It didn't report a malfunction. It didn't send a distress signal. It simply ceased to exist. When we dispatched a Council investigation vessel, they found debris. The station had been completely dismantled down to its component atoms. Every piece of technology was gone, harvested with a precision that left the investigation team baffled. In its place, the humans had left a message buoy. The display shifted to show an object that looked deceptively simple, a metallic sphere about 2 meters in diameter, rotating slowly in the vacuum of space. It broadcast on all standard galactic frequencies. "Play the message," Chancellor Krell commanded. A human face appeared in the holographic display, a woman who appeared to be in her middle years by human standards, with short dark hair and eyes that sparkled with something between amusement and challenge. She wore a uniform unlike any the Council had seen before, sleek and functional, with insignias that meant nothing to galactic observers. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," the woman said in perfect galactic common, though her accent carried the distinct rhythm of human speech. "I am Fleet Admiral Zhang, speaking on behalf of the Terran Stellar Federation. We acknowledge your quarantine and have honored it faithfully. No human vessel has crossed the boundary you established around our system, as per the terms of our exile. However, we thought it time to update you on our progress during our isolation." Admiral Zhang's expression shifted to something that resembled polite satisfaction. "In the 372 years since you left us alone, we've made some advances. We've colonized every planet, moon, and stable asteroid in our system. Current human population stands at 247 billion across 17 major habitats and 412 minor settlements. Mars has an atmosphere now, breathable actually. We figured out the terraforming issue around year 180. Venus is next on the list, should have it done in another century or so." She paused, as if considering what to share next. "Technologically, we've solved fusion power, antimatter containment, and quantum computing. We've mapped the human genome completely and eliminated most genetic diseases. Average human lifespan is now 230 years, though we're working on that. Seems a bit short, honestly. We've also developed artificial intelligence that passed sentience testing, though we keep them as partners rather than servants. We learned from some of your species' mistakes on that front." The assembled council members watched in growing horror as Admiral Zhang continued. "The really interesting development came about a century ago when we cracked faster-than-light travel. Not warp drives or hyperspace lanes like you use, following natural cosmic pathways. We took a different approach, something we call slipstream jumping. We basically punch a hole in space-time, step through, and emerge somewhere else. It's not particularly gentle on the surrounding space, but it works. Current range is about 50 light-years per jump, with a cooldown of 6 hours between jumps. We're working on extending both metrics." Chancellor Krell's liquid metal form froze solid with shock, something that his species did only in moments of extreme distress. Admiral Zhang smiled wider. "We've also established a secondary colony outside your quarantine zone. Don't worry, we maintained the spirit of your exile. The colony is in a system you haven't discovered yet, about 70 light-years from Sol. We call it New Terra. It's been thriving for 40 years now, population of 18 million. We've been careful not to contact any council species, respecting your clear desire not to interact with us." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto the camera with an intensity that translated across species barriers. "Here's the interesting part. While we've been busy building our civilization, we've been watching you. Your quarantine stations? They make excellent observation posts when you hack into their systems. We've monitored every council session, every decision, every conflict. We've studied your technologies, your societies, your strengths, and yes, your weaknesses." The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species vocalized their outrage in sounds ranging from ultrasonic squeals to subsonic rumbles. The Crothian hive mind split momentarily into discordant clusters before reforming. 3 separate delegations demanded immediate military action. Chancellor Krell struggled to restore order, his voice booming through enhanced speakers. This is an act of espionage, of theft. The humans have violated the sanctity of the quarantine, stolen our technology, and engaged in surveillance of Sovereign Council operations. On the recording, Admiral Zhang held up a hand as if she could hear his objection across time and space. Before you get too upset, let me remind you of the exact wording of our exile. We were forbidden from leaving the Sol system and from making contact with Council species. We've done neither. Our colony is established in unclaimed space beyond your quarantine. Our observation was passive. We didn't interfere with your operations. And as for stealing technology? She laughed, a distinctly human sound that somehow conveyed both humor and disdain. We didn't steal anything we couldn't have developed ourselves given time. Your technology just gave us ideas about what was possible. We figured out the how on our own. She stood up from whatever chair she had been sitting in, and the camera angle widened to show what was clearly a starship bridge behind her. It looked nothing like Council vessels with their organic curves and aesthetic considerations. This was brutal functionality, every surface covered in displays and controls. Crew members moving with practiced efficiency. Humans working alongside what appeared to be artificial intelligences manifested as holographic assistants. In approximately 628 more years, your quarantine expires. At that point, we can petition for re-entry into the Galactic Council. Here's the thing, Chancellor Krell, and yes, we know your name and your history. We haven't decided if we want to. You exiled us because we didn't fit your mold, because we asked too many questions and solved problems in ways that made you uncomfortable. Well, we've spent nearly 4 centuries becoming more ourselves, not less. We've built a civilization on human terms, with human values, solving problems the human way. Her expression grew serious, T. 750 years into the quarantine, the Galactic Council faced its first existential crisis in recorded history. The threat came not from within, not from any member species, but from the void beyond the explored regions of the galaxy. The Devourers, as they came to be called, emerged from dark space between spiral arms with no warning and no mercy. They were unlike anything the Council had encountered. Not a single species, but a collective of machines, biological entities, and hybrid forms that consumed everything in their path. Planets were stripped of resources in days. Entire star systems went dark as the Devourers harvested their energy. They didn't communicate, didn't negotiate, didn't stop. They simply advanced, spreading like a virus across the galactic map. The Council's response was immediate and by the book. Defense fleets mobilized according to protocols established thousands of years ago. 543 species contributed ships, weapons, and personnel. The armada that assembled was the largest military force in galactic history, representing the combined might of civilizations that had spent millennia perfecting the art of harmonious cooperation. They engaged the Devourers at the Battle of the Kryn Nebula. The conflict lasted 4 hours. The Council lost 60% of its fleet. Commander Vrix of the Velkrin Defense Corps managed to escape with one of the few surviving vessels. His report to the emergency council session was delivered in the flat, emotionless tone of someone who had witnessed the unthinkable. His bioluminescent patterns had stopped entirely, leaving him a translucent gray that spoke of deep trauma. They adapted, Rick said simply. Every weapon we used, every tactic we employed, worked exactly once. Then they evolved. Our plasma cannons were effective for the first wave. The second wave had shielding that absorbed plasma and converted it to power for their own weapons. Our quantum missiles destabilized their hull integrity for approximately 10 minutes. before they regenerated with quanta-resistant armor. Our coordinated fleet maneuvers, perfected over 10,000 years of theoretical exercises, were countered as if they had been reading our playbooks. Chancellor Krell's liquid metal form had been frozen solid for most of the past week, a state he couldn't seem to break. The stress was literally crystallizing his molecular structure. Casualties? 14 million personnel lost. 827 vessels destroyed. 412 damaged beyond repair. Vrix's voice cracked slightly. The Devourers suffered no measurable losses. We didn't destroy a single one of their units. We barely slowed them down. The chamber, usually filled with the sounds of hundreds of species breathing, clicking, humming, or otherwise existing, was silent as a tomb. A Crothian delegate spoke, the hive mind's unity fragmenting slightly under stress, causing its voice to echo strangely. How long until they reach council space? 27 standard years at their current rate of advance, Vrix replied. They're consuming systems in the neutral zones now. Once they enter populated sectors, we estimate complete council collapse within 50 years, unless we find a way to stop them. Researcher Trilix, who had been investigating the Devourer technology from recovered debris, added her findings to the grim picture. They're not just advanced. They're exponentially adaptive. Every encounter teaches them. Every battle makes them stronger. Our advantages in numbers, in resources, in coordination mean nothing when the enemy learns faster than we can innovate. By the time our scientists develop a new weapon, the Devourers have already evolved a counter, and we're back to square one. What do we do? The question came from a junior delegate, a species that had joined the council only 2 centuries ago. The youngster still believed in the council's fundamental promise that civilization, cooperation, and adherence to proper protocols could solve any problem. Chancellor Krell finally managed to shift back to his liquid state, though it clearly took effort. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of impossible decisions. There is one option, one possibility that has been discussed in private sessions for the past 3 days. The assembled delegates waited, though many had already guessed what was coming. We could ask the humans for help. The chamber exploded. Representatives who moments ago had been united in despair now vocalized every objection, every concern, every fear that had been building for 7.5 centuries. The humans were dangerous, unpredictable, chaotic. They had spent the quarantine period building an empire in secret, violating the spirit, if not the letter, of their exile. They had hacked council systems, established colonies in unclaimed space, and developed technology at a pace that defied all rational models. They were exactly the kind of wild variable that could make a bad situation catastrophic. They could turn on us, shouted a E-Stream representative. They might side with the Devourers, claimed an androgen. We cannot trust them, insisted a Pelax delegate, petals flashing angry reds. Chancellor Krell let them vent. He understood their fear because he shared it. Finally, when the chaos had exhausted itself, he spoke again. You are all correct. The humans are dangerous, unpredictable, and potentially treacherous. They are also our only hope. He manipulated the central display, calling up footage from the Kryn Nebula battle. Watch this sequence again. Look at how the Devourers adapt. Now look at the reports we have from our monitoring of human development. Another display appeared, showing data compiled from 7 centuries of observation. The humans adapted to every challenge their isolation presented. Food shortages? They developed hydroponic systems and synthetic proteins. Resource limitations? They built asteroid mining operations and learned to recycle everything. Genetic diseases? They rewrote their own DNA. Every obstacle made them stronger, more creative, more resilient. Does this sound familiar? The comparison hit the council like a physical blow. The Devourers adapted through evolution and technology. Humans adapted through innovation and sheer stubborn refusal to accept limitations. They were, in some ways, two sides of the same coin. The difference, Chancellor Krull continued, is that humans can be reasoned with. They have culture, art, philosophy. They value life, even alien life. The Devourers are a force of nature. Humans are chaos, yes, but chaos that can be directed, negotiated with, possibly even allied with. A long silence followed. Then the Velcrin delegate who had first suggested exiling humanity, now ancient and dim with age, spoke softly. I condemned them 750 years ago because they frightened me. Their unpredictability, their refusal to follow established wisdom, their insistence on questioning everything. I thought we were protecting galactic civilization from a dangerous anomaly. The old Velcrin's patterns flickered with what might have been regret. Perhaps we were actually protecting a dangerous anomaly from us. Perhaps they were never the threat we imagined. Or perhaps they were, but now we need that kind of threat on our side. Chancellor Krell called for a formal vote. All in favor of suspending the quarantine and requesting military assistance from humanity indicate now. One by one, species that had voted for the exile 7.5 centuries ago reversed their positions. The vote was not unanimous. 47 species abstained and 12 voted against. But the majority was clear. The motion passes, Chancellor Krell announced. Researcher Trilix, prepare a delegation vessel. We will travel to the quarantine boundary and request an audience with the Terran Stellar Federation. May the Ancient Ones help us. We are about to find out what humanity has become. The delegation vessel departed 3 days later. A sleek council diplomatic ship carrying Chancellor Krell, Researcher Trilix, Commander Vix, and representatives from 30 major species. As they approached the quarantine boundary around the Sol system, their sensors immediately detected what 7 centuries of observation had failed to fully appreciate. The Sol system was no longer a single star with planets. It was a megastructure of impossible complexity. Dyson swarms surrounded the sun, harvesting energy on a scale that dwarfed anything the Council had achieved. Massive orbital habitats, each large enough to house billions, ringed every planet. The asteroid belt had been completely reorganized into a geometric pattern, each rock now part of a vast mining and manufacturing network. Even the Oort cloud at the system's edge showed signs of colonization and development. And ships. Thousands of ships, ranging from small craft no bigger than shuttles to vessels that dwarfed the largest Council dreadnoughts. They moved with purpose through the system, following traffic patterns that spoke of a civilization functioning at a level the Council had never imagined possible. By the ancestors, whispered Trilix, her petals frozen in shock. What have they built? As if in answer, their communication system activated. A human face appeared on their display. Not Admiral Zhang this time, but a young man who looked barely old enough to be serving in any military capacity. He smiled pleasantly, that distinctly human expression that could mean anything from genuine welcome to veiled threat. Greetings, Galactic Council delegation. We've been expecting you. Please transmit your diplomatic credentials, and we'll guide you to the meeting coordinates. Oh, and Chancellor Krell? Admiral Zhang says to tell you that you're about 250 years early, but she supposes you have a good reason for. The meeting took place aboard the Indomitable, humanity's flagship and a vessel that redefined what the Galactic Council thought possible in shipbuilding. The Council delegation was escorted through corridors that seemed to bend space itself, passing crew members who were a mix of baseline humans, enhanced humans with visible cybernetic augmentation, and artificial intelligences in physical form. The ship felt alive, not in the organic sense of some Council vessels, but in the way a well-oiled machine feels when every component works in perfect synchronization. Admiral Zhang waited for them in what humans called the strategy room, a massive chamber dominated by a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. The Devourer advance was marked in red, a spreading infection that had already consumed 17% of charted space. She had aged, naturally, though her 170 years sat lightly on features that still held that spark of challenge. The Council remembered from her recording. She was not alone. Surrounding her were dozens of humans in military and civilian attire, along with several artificial intelligences manifested as holographic avatars. One of the A's appeared as a constantly shifting geometric pattern that hurt to look at directly. Another had chosen the form of an elderly human woman with kind eyes. The diversity was jarring to the Council delegates, who were used to species maintaining clear boundaries between biological and artificial intelligence. Chancellor Krell, Admiral Zhang said without preamble, not bothering with formal greetings. "Let me save us both some time. You're here because the Devourers are winning. Your conventional tactics failed catastrophically, and you're desperate enough to ask the chaotic humans for help. Am I close?" Chancellor Krell solidified slightly, a sign of discomfort. "Uncomfortably accurate, Admiral." "Good. Honesty is refreshing." Zhang gestured to the galactic display. "We've been tracking the Devourers for 60 years, since they first emerged. We have over 500 deep space observation posts scattered across the galaxy that you don't know about. We've analyzed their tactics, their technology, their adaptation patterns. We even managed to capture and study 3 of their smaller units." Commander Vrix leaned forward despite himself. "You captured Devourer units? How?" "We couldn't even damage them." A human man standing next to Zhang, wearing the insignia of a general, smiled coldly. "You tried to fight them like you fight each other. Honorably, according to established military doctrine, using approved weapons and tactics. We studied them like we study cancer. Then we hit them with the kind of asymmetric warfare that got us exiled in the first place." Zhang pulled up footage that made the Council delegates recoil. It showed human ships engaging a Devourer formation, using tactics that violated every Council military protocol. Ships that deliberately rammed enemies at relativistic speeds, turning themselves into kinetic weapons. Antimatter mines disguised as debris. Biological weapons designed to corrupt the Devourer's organic components. Cyber warfare that didn't just hack systems, but introduced logical paradoxes designed to crash AI cores. "Effective but horrifying," Zhang said dispassionately. "That's become our specialty. The Devourers adapt to direct threats, so we hit them with indirect ones. They learn from combat, so we make every engagement unique. They consume resources, so we give them resources laced with nanomachines that sabotage their systems from the inside. We fight dirty because clean fighting gets you killed." Researcher Trilix's petals had gone completely white. "This is barbaric." "This is survival," Zhang countered sharply. "And it works. We've destroyed 14 Devourer formations in the past 60 years. They're learning to avoid human-controlled space. That spreading red infection you're so worried about? It's deliberately avoiding the outer regions where our colonies are established. They recognize we're a threat." Chancellor Krell processed this information, his liquid form rippling with conflicting emotions. "If you have the means to fight them, why have you not shared this information? Why let the Council suffer when you could have intervened?" Zhang's expression hardened. "Because you exiled us, remember? You made it very clear that our methods, our way of thinking, our entire approach to problem-solving was unacceptable to galactic civilization. You quarantined us like a disease. For 750 years, we've watched you ignore us, dismiss us, fear us. And now that you need us, you expect us to just set that aside? The silence that followed was heavy with 7 centuries of resentment. Then Zhang's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained hard. But we're not you. We don't abandon people just because they're different or inconvenient. We'll help. But it's going to be on our terms, and you're not going to like all of them. She manipulated the display, bringing up a strategic map. The Devourers are going to reach Council core worlds in 27 years. We can stop them, but not with your current military structure. Your 543 species all maintain separate fleets, separate command structures, separate tactical doctrines. You coordinate through committees and consensus. That's great for peacetime, terrible for war. You want unified command, Chancellor Krell said, seeing where this was going. No, Zhang corrected. We want you to let us run the war. Completely. Human strategic command, human tactical doctrine, human rules of engagement. Your ships, your personnel, your resources, but under our operational control. You bring the numbers. We bring the expertise in creative violence. The council delegates erupted in protest. The very idea was anathema to everything the council stood for. 10,000 years of cooperative decision-making, of consensus and harmony, thrown out in favor of human autocracy. Impossible. Unthinkable. Unacceptable. Zhang waited for them to exhaust themselves. Then she pulled up another piece of footage. This is what happens when the Devourers reach a populated world. The images were nightmare fuel, even for species that had seen war. Billions consumed. Civilizations erased. Worlds left as barren rocks. This is your alternative. You can keep your committee structures and your harmony protocols, and watch as the Devourers systematically erase everything you've built. Or you can set aside your pride, accept that sometimes the chaotic humans know what they're doing, and let us save you. One of the artificial intelligences, the one appearing as geometric patterns, spoke in a voice like synthesized music. There is a third option, Admiral. The Council could sue for peace with the Devourers, negotiate a surrender. The Devourers don't negotiate, Zhang replied flatly. We've tried. They don't communicate at all. They just consume. There's no surrendering to them, no appealing to reason or mercy. They're the universe's way of recycling matter and energy, and they don't care if that matter is currently being used by thinking beings. Chancellor Krell made a decision that would define his legacy. If we agree to this arrangement, what guarantee do we have that humanity won't use this authority to subjugate the Council? You would control our entire military apparatus. That's an enormous amount of power. Zhang met his optical sensors directly. You have my word, and the word of the Terran Stellar Federation. We'll fight your war, save your people, and then we'll go back to our side of the galaxy. We don't want to rule you. Honestly, you'd be a nightmare to govern, all 543 species with your protocols and committees. We just want to exist without being told we're doing it wrong. Your word, Krell said slowly. The word of a species that hacked our observation systems and established illegal colonies. The word of a species that could have destroyed you any time in the past 3 centuries and chose not to. Zhang replied evenly. We have weapons you can't imagine, Chancellor. Antimatter devices that could sterilize planets. Relativistic kinetic impactors that could shatter moons. AI warfare systems that could crash every computer in Council space simultaneously. We could have taken everything the moment we developed faster-than-light capability. We didn't. That should tell you something about our intentions. The AI, appearing as an elderly woman, spoke gently. She's not wrong, Chancellor. I have access to human military databases. Their restraint has been extraordinary. They've watched you dismiss them, fear them, and marginalize them for centuries. A less patient species would have responded with conquest. Commander Vrix, who had witnessed the Devourers firsthand, spoke up. I vote we accept their terms. Pride is a luxury we can no longer afford. If the humans can stop the devourers, let them. We can worry about the political implications later, assuming there is a later. The vote took 3 hours of debate, but eventually the consensus emerged. The Galactic Council would place its military forces under human strategic command for the duration of the Devourer crisis, with human officers integrated into command structures at every level, and human tactical doctrine taking precedence over established Council protocols. Zhang accepted their agreement with a nod. Good. We'll begin integration immediately. Fair warning. You're not going to like how we fight. We're going to use tactics that horrify you, strategies that seem reckless, and weapons that violate every military ethics protocol you've established. But we'll win. That's what matters. She pulled up a new strategic map, this one showing human fleet positions. We have 4,000 warships ready to deploy, with another 12,000 in construct.